Hello and welcome to the Learning to Live podcast. I'm your host Amelia, and today's episode will be my very first episode of the podcast, so I'm very excited. I'm going to start off by just doing a little introduction so that you guys can get to know me a little bit more. I'm 18. I turn 19 towards the end of April. I'm from London and I'm an English student at the moment. I go to the Open University, which is an online university. So I do it online and part-time for various reasons I will get into at a later date. I'm planning on doing an episode talking about university. So if that's something that you're interested in, then make sure you follow. I love film and TV. I do one day want to work in the film and TV industry. Ideally, at the moment, for the past year and a half, 2 years, I have wanted to write for film and TV. So that is a little bit about me. I love reading and journaling. I have recently started my health and fitness journey. Again, that is something that I will be touching on more in another episode. I've been on a bit of a journey for the past year or so. Is when I think it started about 2 years ago. I started journaling, and that was quite transformative for me. And then about a year ago, I really started getting to understand, the law of attraction, manifestation, and stuff like that a little bit more. I started meditating, put my intentions out there a bit more, and have better intentions and stuff like that. And that's when I started to get into kind of just the way of the world a little bit more. Maybe that isn't the right term, but that's kind of how I want to say it. Obviously, there's so many different ways that you can live your life in different paths that you're going on, but the one that I'm on at the moment is completely different to how I would have thought I would be a few years ago, if that makes sense. I love listening to podcasts. I listen to them at the gym, I listen to them when I'm tidying my room. Sometimes I listen to them when I'm supposed to be working. I always have so much to say. I get excited about certain things, and no shade to anyone, but sometimes I just don't have anyone to talk about them to, or I do, but they're not that interested in it. And that is no shade to anyone, any of my friends. It's just there isn't always going to be someone who understands what you're talking about, who wants to know more about what you're talking about. So I decided to start a podcast. So I can, I have somewhere to upload all my thoughts and rants to, but also I think it's just nice, when I was starting out on my journey, as people call it, I think it would have been nice to have this podcast to listen to. So yeah, that is a little bit about me, why I started a podcast. I'm gonna do a little highs and lows segment, because when I was thinking about doing my podcast, I wanted to do a highs thing in each episode. And then I found a new podcast. I found a new podcast called Drink More Water by Riley and Sophie. And I found their podcast, and they do a highs and lows segment. And I thought, I know it's one of my favourite bits of their podcast. And that kind of made me think, actually, I don't just want to highlight the highs, I do want to give a little bit about the lows as well. Obviously, it's not something that I'm going to go into as much detail in, I'm not going to go and spread all my lows on the internet. But I think it just makes it a little bit more realistic, and just gives everyone a bit of a more realistic expectation. But my highs, it is only Tuesday right now, but I'm kind of going to do my highs for last week and so far this week, just because last week was very up and down. But I came home from a weekend away in Hastings on Monday, and I had a brilliant weekend. It was so nice. I love just being by the sea. I don't live in the city of London, but I do live, I don't live central London, but I do live in London still. So I don't have any beaches near me, and I like being near the beach. I like being near woodsy areas, and obviously Hastings is on the coast, isn't it? It's by the sea. So I had a little weekend away, and I loved it. I came home on Monday, and I was exhausted. I have chronic fatigue and chronic pain, so I had just thought, it's just the weekend catching up to me, which isn't a surprise, and it's something that happens to me on a regular basis if I have a particularly busy period of time, even if it's just a few days, or even if I've just done something quite busy the day before, I will then like be paying the consequences for that for the next few days. Anyway, so I just thought it was that, but then Monday afternoon, I wanted to start doing work for uni, but I ended up just laying in bed. I was too tired to do anything. It isn't something that is particularly strange or unusual for me. Tuesday morning, I woke up and I felt terrible. And then I did think, I don't really know what's going on. I'm just obviously still really exhausted from the weekend. And then towards the end of the day, like the afternoon, I was exhausted and I'd started getting a bit of a sore throat and coffee and stuff. And I went to bed at 9:30. Now, like I said, I have chronic fatigue, but I'm never actually able to fall asleep before at least 10 o'clock. My body just doesn't allow me to fall asleep, which is the worst, especially when you have chronic fatigue. And I woke up the next morning and again I just felt even worse, and I thought, oh my god, I've got COVID. So I ordered a COVID test, but I had to get a PCR. I did try and do a lateral flow, but I don't have any left in our house. We literally used the last ones up before we went away. And I wasn't allowed to order any more lateral flows. I think it's just because they keep them for like the essential workers, because obviously they need them more often and it's more important they have them than me, which I completely understand because I'm not an essential worker. So I ordered a PCR test. So obviously it took a few days to come back to me, the results, but I did it. And then that night I felt even worse. I went to sleep at 7:30. I woke up at 9:30 and I was really like shivery. Like I usually have quite a few layers on me when I go to bed. I like being all like bundled up in pillows and duvets and blankets and stuff. But I had my 6 layers on me, I think it was. And I went to sleep and I was still freezing, like shuddering. And is that a word? Shuddering? I think it is. If it's not, then that's a bit embarrassing. Anyway, I woke up a couple hours later and I was sweating. I got up to go to the toilet and I nearly passed out. Combined with the shivering, like it wasn't normal. The only time I've had that before was when I had sepsis. So I was like, oh my god, I've got sepsis again. Now, when I had sepsis before, it was caught quite early on. Luckily, I was treated for it and I was okay, like I'm completely fine from that now. But anytime I get a symptom that I had when I had sepsis, I start panicking and thinking that I've got it again, which obviously is not it's not a nice thing. But at this point I was waiting for my COVID test to arrive. Anyway, I went back to sleep, slept until about 8 o'clock in the morning, got up and I tried to do uni work and I just couldn't get on with it. Anyway, a few days later I was feeling much better. My COVID test came back negative, thank the universe, don't have COVID. Anyway, so that was my low of the last week, was just that illness. I don't know exactly what it was. I still don't know what it was. It wasn't COVID and I trust the PCR test. That was my low, was thinking I had COVID. I mean, my high obviously was that I didn't actually have COVID. So that was nice. Not having to, worry about having COVID. I mean, it would have been nice to know what it was. I think it was just a really bad cold. But thankfully, I got over it quite fast. I just had a really, really, really bad few days. Now I'm back to my normal self. So that was really nice. So that was my high and low from the week just gone. My other low is just because of that, I wasn't able to do much uni work. I didn't really do any. I think I did like 2 things. but I was just so exhausted, and when I'm exhausted I can't concentrate, like I can't do it. That's something that I struggle with quite often. Anyway, yes, my other low, I didn't really get anything done. But my high for this week is that it's Tuesday today and I've almost finished all my uni work for this week, which just makes me feel so good after last week. Obviously I didn't really do anything, so hopefully this week I am going to try and focus a little bit more on the podcast. I am just finishing my cover art and my trailer, and then I'm going to upload them. I want to get them done tomorrow and posted tomorrow. So I do want to focus a little bit more on that this week. I do also want to try and catch up from last week. And I do have an assignment coming up that I kind of want to get done before the Easter holidays. Because it's due like in the Easter holidays. Because I have like a assignment I think it's every 6 weeks. So I do want to get that done. I mean, my other high from last week was I had to rest, and I think I really needed that. I think that illness, although it was horrible to deal with, I am grateful that it happened when it did, because I did need rest from the weekend. So I was able to get that, although like obviously I felt guilty that I couldn't do any work, that I couldn't really do anything, but I'm glad that I was able to just rest for those few days, and that I was able to catch up with university afterwards. I could focus on just giving my body what it needed. I'm grateful I was able to rest. I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do that. I think that's it for the highs and lows bit of this week. So I'm going to move on. I want to do a end of the month recap and then a goals for the next month segment at the end of each month, which is this episode for the first one. So my March recap, I think the two biggest things is, the first thing is my year of mentoring finished. And I did a year of mentoring with Arts Emergency, and I really, really like my mentor. Well, she was my mentor. She's not like my mentor anymore, but we have the professional relationship, if that makes sense. So I can still contact her about my work and stuff like that, and I have met a couple people through her as well. I started it last January, like last year, January 2021. I started the mentor year in January 2021, and it was supposed to finish like officially in January of this year, and I don't really know why it didn't really until March. I think that because of COVID, they were kind of hoping that by January we'd be able to meet in person to do the celebration. So maybe it lasted a little bit longer to see if we could. In the end we couldn't, and we did do it online, but it was still really nice. It was a really nice celebration, and I really enjoyed my year of mentoring. And as well, they send out opportunities and stuff, and I'm still in their kind of like, I don't know whether you call it a support group, but in their community. There we go. I'm still in their community until I'm 25, I think it is. So that's really nice because I can still get opportunities come through. So yeah, that was probably my highlight of March. It was a little bit sad now that, you know, I don't have my monthly meeting with my mentor. And I really, really enjoyed doing that, and I appreciate that so much. And now it's time to move on from that. So that felt quite crazy to me. I mean, the other thing that feels really weird to me that also happened in March, it was kind of the second biggest thing, was that I'm officially 2/3 of the way through my first year of uni. Which, again, that just sounds crazy to me. My year started in October, and it's now almost April in a couple of days, and I finish in May. So I still have a couple months to go. I always find myself saying this all the time, but time goes so fast when I'm doing something, and I don't really realise it. Like, the past month or so, every weekend I sit there thinking, wow, like, I can't believe it's the weekend already. the weeks are going so fast, I don't feel like I have enough time. And I think it's probably because uni keeps me quite preoccupied. So during the week, it doesn't go that fast. But once it hits Friday, I'm like, whoa, like, how is it Friday again already? I'm officially 2/3 of my first year done. I have 4 years total. I'm doing a diploma of higher education in English. So that course in general is 2 years long, but because I have to do it part-time, it's 4 years long. So I've almost done my first year, which is crazy to me because like I don't feel like I should nearly be finished with the first year already, if that makes sense. Like it feels like it should still be, maybe the first or second, third of the year. I'll be on my third semester after Easter. So, or third term, whatever you call it. So yeah, that is my March recap. I did also think the weather has started to get really nice, especially this past like couple weeks. It was 15 degrees the other day for a good few days where I live, which is really nice, and I love the warm weather. I don't like the hot weather, but I like it when it's nice outside. I like it warm. I like to sit outside and work. I like meditating and reading and journaling and stuff out there. I actually, when I was working on my podcast stuff, I was sitting outside in the garden and doing that, which I really, really enjoy. So that was really nice. And now, now the weather's getting nicer, I'll be able to stay out there, be able to go out there a little bit more. So I think those are like my highlights of March. I did also, obviously I have mentioned earlier in the podcast, I went on a trip to Hastings for the weekend. So I had a nice 4-day weekend away, which again was lovely, loved it. And so those were my March highlights. So I'm going to go into my goals for April now. When it was coming to the end of the year last year, I was thinking about New Year's resolutions. Now I'm not that much of a New Year's person. I mean, it's not that I don't celebrate it. I just don't I don't go to New Year's parties and do all this and that, and I don't really set resolutions either. I like to think of them more as intentions and goals. I know a resolution is kind of like a goal, but in my head they're quite different. Like when I think of New Year's resolutions, it's not really something that in my head is something that's really hard to stick to and really hard to accomplish, and I don't want to think of it like that. So I like to think of it more of goals and intentions, and the intentions help me work towards the goal, if that makes sense. So my goals for April, there's a few of them. So the first one is going outside every day. This is one I want to appreciate the outside a bit more, especially now the weather's getting nicer. I want to appreciate it more, and I know as well, when I am outside and I have been outside that day, my mindset is so much better. So ideally, my perfect time to go outside would be the morning, because I feel like that would be a nice way to set, for the day to set out. But even if I just go out for 5 minutes, or I go and do a meditation out there, or go and do some work out there, I do want to go out every day. And luckily I have a garden, so I'm able to do that. My next thing is I want to be a little bit more disciplined when it comes to working. So I have decided to set a different schedule for myself. Before, I would kind of just do it when I felt able to do it, just because I do have a disability, and I do struggle with school and university because of that. So it has been a little bit difficult to find a routine that works for me. And I think the hardest thing about the routine is that it changes, and it changes quite often, and I don't necessarily know that it's going to change, if that makes sense. But I have decided to set a little bit of a schedule for myself that I think will work better than what I was doing before. But Tuesdays I aim to work from 10 till 3. That is kind of just like a rough idea. And then Wednesday, Thursday I do 10 till 1, and then Friday I do any catch up. So those hours are a little bit flexible, like I said, but I just want to kind of aim for that, just because I think it will be a little bit more helpful when it comes to knowing when I'm supposed to be doing work and stuff like that. The other part of that was staying off of my phone when I need to. Like I said, I get quite distracted. My concentration levels are definitely not the best. So sometimes I think of something that I need to do, like I'll often remember that I haven't updated my Goodreads, for example. So I go on my phone to do that whilst I remember to do it, and then I get distracted and I'm no longer in the work zone, if that makes sense. But also as well, like the first thing I do in the morning is go on my phone, and that is mainly because it's like the only way I can stay awake. Even like if my curtain is open, I'll still fall back asleep, and I can't necessarily like sit up or stand up straight away in the mornings. I need a few minutes for my body to adjust before I can like get up. So I can't just like, I know a lot of people like just go and wake up and wash your face and you'll be fine. Does not work for me. I really wish it did. It doesn't. But I have stopped going on social media first thing in the morning. That has definitely helped, just because I'm not on my phone for as long. I also I don't like going on social media when I first wake up, because I feel like then I'm going to be comparing my day to everyone else's and what everyone else is doing so far. And a lot of the people I have like on Snapchat, for example, are at university. So like I'll be seeing other people's days at university and I'll be thinking, right, okay, mine's going to have to be like that. Why isn't mine like that? So it's nice not waking up and going straight on that. I usually just go on and reply to any messages I got overnight. And then, or sometimes I'll scroll through Pinterest, and then I'll wake up and get out of bed. So I have definitely been a little bit more disciplined with that for the past couple days. Not the past week, because like I had mentioned earlier, I was really ill for most of last week. So I did pretty much just spend the whole time watching Netflix and on my phone. I wasn't even on my phone that much even. I mean, I was on TikTok quite a bit, but like I did have to keep napping last week. So, I mean, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. My next goal, and this is this is my biggest one, and it's to be better at going to bed at a decent time. I have mentioned earlier in the podcast that I do have chronic fatigue, so I'm just tired all the time. And you might think, you do not sound tired, and people have said this to me before, that they think I'm lying or exaggerating about it. My body is always tired, and it affects everything I do. Find it easier to go to sleep if I've been laying in bed already for a while. So like if I've been sitting at my desk for a while, I need to like have that relaxation like time where I'm laying in bed, just because I feel like I've had time to relax and not really have any distractions, and then I'm able to like, my brain has been able to kind of shut off a little bit better and like get ready to go to sleep, if that makes sense. I think as well this will help with my schedule throughout the day. I want to aim to wake up a little bit earlier every day. Like in my ideal life, I would wake up, 6, 7. It's not realistic, so my goal at the moment is 8:30. Every day be awake at 8:30. And I am at 8:30 at the moment most days. And my issue with this is I get very guilty. If I can't do something, like I physically can't do it, I do get quite guilty sometimes. Like if I have to go back to sleep for another 20 minutes, I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But I know that my body needed me to do that. It's not that, oh, I can't be arsed, I'm going back to sleep. I feel like this is something that can be quite hard for people to understand. Is I don't do it because I'm lazy or because I want to. I do it because it's what my body needs. I just have to listen to my body in those situations. So yeah, most days I'm awake 8:30, and I would like to slowly make that a little bit earlier, maybe 8 o'clock, maybe 7:30. You know, we'll see about that. But that is my goals for April. Other than my biggest goal for April was to release my podcast. I have been wanting to do a podcast for probably about a year, and I was so busy with school that I had no time to do anything else when I was in year 13 and I first started thinking about a podcast. And then once I finished school, I was working on my writing and stuff like that, and then I started uni, and it's taken a while to get used to it. There's still like some parts of me that aren't used to it. And then I got back into doing my physiotherapy, which is what I do at the gym. I do like some physio, sometimes I'll do more of like a gym session, but to me, the gym is my physio. And maybe I'll go into that a little bit more in another episode. But yeah, I then started to get back into that because, you know, I've been doing physio since I was 6, but it's been something that I've always really struggled with managing physically. And now that, you know, I'm on a part-time schedule for uni, it's the perfect time to start now. Podcast, I was just like, now is the time. I went back to the gym in November, and obviously now it's March when I'm recording this, so I started working on the podcast, I think it was about February time, and then the past few weeks I've really been cracking down on it and getting, you know, a good like plan of what I want to do in each episode. And the way that I'm going to structure the podcast, I haven't said this yet, I'm going to do kind of like a season of episodes and then take a break, and then when I'm ready to do another season, I'll do another season. So I'm thinking at the moment between 6 and 12 episodes for the first season. Obviously, you know, it depends. That is what I'm gonna do, just because I think that will work a little bit better with my body's schedule. I will have an episode every week for as long as each season runs. The last thing that I want to talk about in today's episode is my 2022 TBR. So I love reading, it's one of my favourite things to do. And it's actually another reason why I started the podcast, because I want to talk about books, but none of like my close friends, I mean, some of them do read, but I just feel like sometimes I'm boring people by talking about books non-stop. And I know obviously everyone has different interests, but if you like books, then I think you'll like this podcast. I do want to do more book episodes. I think I might just do a segment every few episodes. We'll definitely be talking about books a little bit more. The other thing is, I do want to be posting on YouTube, and I will definitely be posting book content on there as well when I do post. So if that's something that you're interested in, then my YouTube channel is Amelia J, spelled Emelia, and then a J afterwards. I want to talk about my 2022 TBR today. It is a little bit of a long one. I mean, this is what I definitely want to read this year. There are loads of other books that I want to read, but the books that I would like to get done this year, and these are the ones that I have already as well, I think it is. So I'm going to start off with the ones that I already have. So the first one is Unconventional by Maggie Harcourt. I got this sometime last year, and I started reading it in December. I finished it in January, so that one I've already done. And then Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I, 1, love the cover. 2, I just think the way that she titles her books makes so much sense. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll give another example later on when I carry on through this list. But anyway, Colleen Hoover was a big goal for this reading year. I really wanted to read some of her books, and my best friend got me Ugly Love for Christmas, which I was very grateful for. So thank you, Kaylee, for getting me Ugly Love. Again, I've read that one already. The next is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I have had this list, I think it was actually the first book by her that I put on my TBR, just on my like want to read, and I just think the concept sounds really good. So yeah, I don't have this one yet. I do want to get it at some point. And then next is History All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. So Adam Silvera, he is the author of They Both Die at the End, which I have read, loved it. Also co-wrote What If It's Us and Here's to Us with Becky Albertalli. What If It's Us I loved, and I just really enjoy Adam Silvera's writing. It's funny because History All You Left Me is the book that I've had for the longest out of all of his books, but I haven't actually read it yet. But yeah, next up is All This Time. Now, I don't know exactly how to say the authors' names. I'm gonna try. I'm sorry if I say it wrong, but it's by Mickey Daughtry and Rachel Lippincott. They also wrote the book of 5 Feet Apart, which I read last year or the year before, and I loved it. I bawled my eyes out at that book, and it was so good. And then I watched the film afterwards and I cried even more. But I love the style of writing and I love the story. So I think that I'll really enjoy All This Time as well. Next up we have As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, which is now becoming quite a popular series on TikTok. It's the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and it's the 3rd book in it. I read the first book in the first lockdown and I loved it. And I read it around my birthday. I'm pretty sure I read it on my birthday. And I loved it. And then the 2nd book I read not that long afterwards. And then I got the 3rd book, I think it was about a month or 2 after it got released. And I did start reading it, but I just couldn't. I think I got about 100 pages in and I just couldn't get exactly into it. At that point I was in a bit of a reading rut, and it's quite a big book. So I kind of put it back down. But I am definitely going to pick it back up because I feel like now I'm on a little bit of a roll with my reading. I'm on my 9th book this year, so which is quite good for me. I know some people might think that isn't a lot, but for me that is quite good. I do definitely want to finish it, and I think it might be one of the next few books that I read. Next up we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I have had this book on my TBR for probably best part of a year and a half, and I got it probably about 9 months ago, and I haven't read it yet. And I think it's just because it's Greek mythology, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's Greek mythology. I haven't read any Greek mythology before. And then next up we have Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. I've had this on my list for ages and ages and ages, probably years. I actually think it was one of the first books I put on my list, on my shelf, on Goodreads when I got it. And I got it at least 2 years ago, I think it was. And I know as well that it's a BBC series as well. And I know the book is a series in general as well. So I do really, really, really want to read it. But again, when I got it, like I was just in a bit of a reading rut. So I just haven't picked it up yet. And then next I have This Is My Truth by Yasmin Rahman, I think it is. Again, I've had this for a while, just haven't picked it up yet. And then this same also goes for my next book, which is The Last Charm by Ella Albright. Again, I really love the cover for this one. It's beautiful. I picked it up a few months ago. Again, just haven't read it yet. And then the next one I'm really excited to read, and that is Autobiography by Christina Lauren. This is my first Christina Lauren book. I have heard so much about the authors in the past few months because of their books Love and Other Words, and there's quite a few other ones that I want to read as well by them. But Autobiography I got for Christmas the year before last from my sister, and the cover of it, one, is beautiful, and two, now that I've heard like so much about the authors, I'm like, right, I really, really, really need to read it. Next up, we have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is what I was saying with her, the way she titles the books is so clever, because the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, what ends? What ends? I need to know what ends with them. What ends with us? Why is it called that? And it didn't make sense to me, at least, until the last page. And then it all clicked, and that really completed the book. Like, for me, that's what completed it, was the way, the whole book I was sitting there thinking, what ends with us, what ends with us. I literally didn't put it down. I read it in 2 days because I needed to know. It kept me going. Anyway, I have read it, loved it. The thing is with Ugly Love and It Ends With Us is, everyone says it will make you bawl your eyes out so much, and I'm quite an emotional person. Again, quite emotional when I read books as well. I didn't cry as much as I thought I would, based on what other people had told me. I think maybe, I wouldn't say I exactly saw everything that was coming, but I think because I knew that was the best way to end the books. That's what those characters needed, that I didn't cry that much. But again, loved it. Next up we have P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. That is the second book in the To All the Boys I Loved Before series. I read the first one. I have watched the first film. I haven't watched any of the other films either. I know there's 2 more. I really need to watch them, but I think I might read them first. But in my head, Yes, I Still Love You is a bit of a summary book. Not necessarily like summer, like end of summer, beginning of like the school year. So I think that's probably when I'll read it. It's probably like August time. And then next up we have Guardian Angel by Alexis Madison. This one and the next one are both from a website that sends out free review copies of new authors' books. So you get like an e-copy. They just send out an email with the book and the blurb, and then if you'd like to request a copy, you just click a link. And voracious readers only, they basically, any author who is releasing from 1 to 3 books, like their first up to 3 books, they can use that service, and then you can just get an e-copy for free. And then all you have to do in return is leave a review, which I just think is really good for the authors, and as well, like, it's a nice way for readers to be able to get new content to read. And as well, it's completely free, so if that's something that you would think you'd be good at, or if you like if you enjoy writing book reviews or you want to get into it, then definitely have a look at that. I will put the link in the show notes, I think it's called, for you to have a look at that if you'd like. Anyway, so these 2 books that are on my TBR this year are both provided through that service, and that is Guardian Angel by Alexis Madison and Escape by Jude McLean. Escape I've read already. I read that in like 3 days, I think it was, and I read it on my Kindle as well. All the books I get through there I download and put on my Kindle, and I really enjoyed Escape, and I think it's like my first adult romance book. All the other ones I've read are usually YA, which is young adult, whereas this is my first like adult one. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And Guardian Angel I haven't read yet. And then I have a list of books that I didn't have when I wrote my TBR at the end of December last year. 5 of them I do have now, so my extras, I like to call them. So the books that I've read out so far were just the books that I really wanted to read this year, that I already have. And then, except for November 9, that is the one exception. And then I wrote like an extras list of books that I didn't have at the time of writing, but I wanted to get and read this year. So the first one is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I heard so much about it, and I'm pretty sure it's like a childhood friends to lovers, I think it is. And then next up is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I got this and read it already, and that's what put me like on a roll with reading. I loved it so much, and when I bought it in Waterstones, and the lady who worked there was talking to me about it, and she was like, it's so good. I read it in like 2 hours. And I went home and I started it, and I got about 100 pages in after like a week, and then I sat down one night and then I finished it. I loved it so much. It is one of my favourite books, and it's like a Grumpy Sunshine, fake dating sort of thing book, which I love, and it's such a good book. Highly recommend. The next one that I have is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Almaz. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it. I'm sorry if it isn't. But I actually bought this the other day. Again, heard a lot about it, and I just really want to read it. And then next one is The Cheat Sheet. I, for some reason, didn't write down the author on this list, but again, really want to read it, and I love the cover for it as well. It looks really pretty. The next I have The Lucky List. Again, for some reason I didn't write down the author, so I don't know who it is, but again, if you just search the books, Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan, again, heard about it through Steph Bora. Heard about it a little bit on BookTok as well. Next up is Here's to Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I have this. I bought it a couple months ago and I literally went into Waterstones to get it. I went past it like 3 times and I didn't realise, like I just didn't see it. And I asked the lady who was like walking around. She took me over to it and it was right there. Anyway, it's the second book. It's like a series to What If It's Us, which I really enjoyed. And then next up, I have Verity by Colin Hoover. Again, another Coho book. I have read this, loved it. I think it is one of my all-time favourite books. It's like a thriller / romance. Oh my god, it was amazing. I flew through it as well. Next up we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. They've just made that into a movie and it has Lucy Hale in it. So I bought the book and I did kind of have the book on my list for a while, and then after I found out they were making it into a movie, I was like, right, okay, I really, really want to read it. Next up we have The Paris Connection. This is the one, I bought it in Tesco when I bought The Hating Game because it was like a buy 2 for something. And then next up we have The Map from Here to There, which is by Emery Lord, and it is a second book to one of her other books called The Start of Me and You, which is what got me back into reading. I didn't read for a few years and then I read that and here I am today. It was all history after that. Again, I loved that the first one so much. Obviously it's what put me back into reading. So I'm really looking forward to the second one in that. She also has 3 other books other than those 2. I have all 5. I've read, so far I have 2 that I need to read, which is The Map from Here to There, which is on this year's TBR, and then Open Road Summer, which I might read it this year, but I'm not sure yet. And then Crystal Healing. I just found this little Crystal Healing book in the works, and I don't remember the author, but it's called the Crystal Healing box, and it comes like in a little box with some cards and the book. And then Healing is the New High by Vex King. Heard a lot about it. I saw it on a friend's story on Instagram. She posted like one of the pages and I just thought I need to read that. And I have read it now. So that's very exciting. And then the next few books are self-improvement sort of books. So it's The Witch Book of Self-Care, which I have, again, I found it in the works. The Untethered Soul. I heard a lot about this one when I was reading Asking It's Given, which is a law of attraction book. And then the final book is The Little Book of Earth Magic, which again I found in the works. They have a lot of books, especially like non-fiction books. So, and they're all great prices as well. That was my 2022 TBR. Quite a few books going on there. But yeah, that is the end of this podcast now. I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you enjoyed, then don't forget to follow the podcast so that you'll be able to find my new episodes when they come out.